Welcome to the Circuit of Success. I'm your host, Brett Gilliland, and today I've got not a classmate, but a college guy. We didn't know each other in college, but we both graduated the way Dave, I like to say it, is the Eastern Illinois University. I've got Dave Mitchell, entrepreneur, speaker, writer, consultant, wine sommelier. I mean, you name it, man, this guy's doing it. Dave, how you doing today?
Fantastic. How you doing, Brad?
I'm doing great. Thanks for being on the show. I got to give a shout out to Mallory Bunt. She's the one that introduced us. I guess you were down here in O'Fallon, Illinois, maybe speaking on the Air Force Base, right?
I was. I've done that now, I think 4 times. It's always an honor. And I was glad that she was able to put us together.
Yeah. She showed up the next day at a kid's soccer game and she said, you got to get this guy's book and you got to get him on your podcast. And so I connected with you on LinkedIn that night at the kids game. And here we are. We'll talk about your 2 books, but this one right here, The Power of Understanding People. And you also have the power of understanding yourself, which there's a lot of stuff that we're going to talk about today. So, but again, I like on all shows, I like to start with kind of what's made you the man you are today. We both grew up in smaller towns in the central part of Illinois. I was Mattoon, Illinois. You're Greenup, Illinois. And what helped you get where you're at today, Dave?
Oh, gosh, that's a tough question. In fact, the book, The Power of Understanding Yourself, is about that journey and trying to figure out how you come to be who you are and are you living your best truth. But I think one of the things that informs me coming from a rural area in Southern Illinois is, and having been raised by a father that fought with Patton in World War II and survived the Depression. And so I've always felt like my life outcomes were my responsibility and that I needed to take full control over how things turn out. And I think that's one of the reasons why I ended up starting my own company and why that company has been successful is that I just feel like anytime something turns out wrong, I look at what did I do to contribute to that, and anything that turns out right, I try to figure out what I did to make that happen. And honestly, I'll tell you, when things go wrong, you know exactly what you need to do. When things go right, you don't know how much of that's luck.
Right,
So
exactly.
I always tell people, don't worry about the mistakes. That's where you're going to learn a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Well, it is true, right? I mean, I think back on my 19-year career, and I think I can think back literally to the year and really when things happen. And some of the biggest kick in the shorts were the ones where I learned the most, right?
That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
If we take the time to actually learn the lesson, I'm not sure everybody does that.
Yeah, you're exactly right. That's a kind of slow down to speed up type thing. So, born in Greenup, Illinois, you went to Eastern Illinois University. Your baseball career stopped there. My golf career stopped there, and we got into business, and the rest is history, right? So,
Exactly.
Talk to us about that journey though for you. So you left Eastern, you went to University of Illinois and got your master's there. How did your professional career progress from there?
Right. Well, it wasn't quite as linear as that makes it sound. I actually, like so many failed athletes, I thought I would be a sportscaster. And so my undergraduate degree was in mass communications with a broadcast journalism focus. So I actually worked in television over in Terre Haute, Indiana.
Oh, yeah.
For a little while before I discovered I didn't really like that. I was good at it, but I didn't enjoy it. So it's kind of the opposite of baseball. I like baseball. I just wasn't any good at it. It was the opposite. So after kind of bouncing around for a little while, I ended up in human resources development, training and development, and found my joy. And that's when I went back, got my graduate degree, progressed through the corporate world to finally executive level, and then eventually started my own company.
Yeah, very good. And so what do you think when you look back on your career? You're talking about, I would call you an expert on how to understand people and understand yourself. I mean, what are the things, one of my questions is the different styles of people. There's introverts, there's extroverts, no matter what, there's people probably on the billionaire list that are both of those, right? So there's a lot of ways to skin a cat. So what are you learning about people out there that you can share with our listeners today?
Well, so I've written 3 books and I have a 4th one coming out in spring. And the one topic that's in every book is this internal locus of control, which alludes back to that quality that I think was first instilled in me by my father when I was young. I think you're absolutely right, Brett. I think as my books illustrate, there's lots of different styles of people. There's lots of different styles of leadership and communicating. They're introverts or extroverts. I'm on stage and have won awards for public speaking, and yet I'm an introvert. So there's lots of different ways to skin that cat, like you put it. But I think the one thing that all successful people have is that belief that they have to take responsibility for things that happen to them in life. There's always things you can point at that you wish had gone better. I wish I was born to wealthy parents. I wish I wish I'd have just given up on that career and gone straight to Ivy League schools or something. But the baseball career, rather, not the speaking career. But at the end of the day, the life is yours. It's your life. It's the one you're given, and nobody else and no other factors can be blamed for it. It just doesn't matter.
Can you grow that learning, do you think, or is that more, are you born with that? I mean,
it's a great question, Brett. I believe that you can change your stars, so to speak, but it takes something called metacognition. And this may be the thing I'm most thankful for. I grew up and it wasn't a great childhood. My mom was dealing with a lot of problems that she made poor choices for coping mechanisms. So the end result of that was I spent a lot of time wandering this rural community out in the woods with my dog Red, thinking about stuff a lot. And so my mom, in her unintentioned way, actually gave me a great gift to ponder and think about things and really consider how I've been shaped and what my choices are. And I think if a person develops the ability to think about how they think, which is literally what metacognition means, they can start to evaluate why they behave in ways that may be toxic, and why they chose to do that, and change that. Right? It's not easy. I'm 58 years old. For me to change something, I've got to address 58 years worth of experiences.
Right.
But you can do it. It just takes some discipline and takes some real self-reflection.
Yeah. And it's tough too, right? Because I think no matter what, we're always got different things coming at us in today's crazy world. And, I got 4 kids, and I know a lot of people listen have kids, and it's, when you and I were back playing sports, it's a lot different now than it is back then. And so I think those things are hard to deal with. And I call it strategic think time. So I put it on my calendar every single week, and we have to slow down to think. And what did you say? It's think how you think, right? That's the metacognition. Exactly. That's me in this black journal right over here, that I have to slow down and think, whether it's my personal life, it's my professional life, it's how do we want to deal with clients differently, but it's very purposeful, right? It's very purposeful in how we spend time doing that. So is that something that you recommend to people, or what's your thoughts there?
Absolutely. I think, first of all, I think your terminology, strategic think time, sounds a lot more professional than my terminology, which is wander ponders. But I think the key there in what you say is that you carve out some time to reflect, right? I think whether it's business, whether it's our personal life, I think, as you point out, we live in a very frenetic time. And I don't imagine, barring some catastrophic change in society, that's going to get any better. Yeah. We're being barraged by more sensory sources, and we have access to information more easily than we've ever had it in our life. Yep. And I think a lot of that's really great, but one part that's not great is that we often don't take time to reflect, whether that's feeling gratitude, whether that's just kind of analyzing decisions we've made and how did that go, and was that the right thing, and just taking a deep breath. And however you choose to do that, you sound like a guy that works best if you have a regimented process. I just disappear into the woods for an hour or two, and that's how I do it. But whatever works for you, it's important that you integrate that into your life.
No, and you're right. I mean, I think, we were talking before we started recording about your land and my land, and it is good to find that thing that you can go do, whether it's getting out in the woods and putting the boots on and riding a 4-wheeler, or walking with your dog, or whatever it may be. I think I've been guilty in the past of it's just grind. And then it's like you wake up and you're like, what just happened, right? And I think you do have to put those little blocks of time, I think, purposefully on your calendar. If you're a busy person, you work in an office environment and you've got meetings and different things going on all day, I think we got to be very purposeful with our time.
Yeah, I completely agree. And And sometimes you can, I'm not a great meditator. You know, that was one of the things I always aspired to be that I could
Yeah.
never accomplish was, you know, get a meditation tape and
Yeah.
kind of get that mindfulness going. But what I learned, I actually learned this raising my son. We have two kids, and it was always easy to talk with my daughter. She'd always give you a full report of her day, but the son always answered like in one or two,
Exactly.
word responses, unless we were out biking or playing pitch and catch or doing something. And I started to realize, I'm kind of the same way. If my wife asked me how my day was, I usually just said, "Oh, it's fine."
Yeah.
But if we're cooking together or we're doing something together, I tend to be, I speak more. So for me, and maybe for other people, sometimes doing that monotonous, repetitive activity, like in my case, clearing the fields, burning brush, it also kind of puts you in the right place to be more reflective and engage in metacognition.
Got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So in your book, I know here the one I'm reading right now, The Power of Understanding People, that you can find anywhere. You talk about absorb, connect, and apply. So talk to us about that. How do we absorb it? How do we connect it? And how do we apply it?
Yeah, this came from, so I started, I always say I wanted to be a teacher. Unfortunately, we just don't pay them enough. So I had to find a profession that would compensate me at the lifestyle I wanted to live.
That's right.
But I was always fascinated about this notion of transfer of learning. How do you take information from one brain and instill it in another brain? And I took physics and calculus in high school, but I couldn't do any physics and calculus. But I passed the courses. I got grades. So that tells me that just being present and listening and absorbing it and understanding it isn't really learning. So there's got to be more. And then I've thought about things like, so I don't golf, but I don't dislike the game. I played the game. I see the value of the game. So that to me that's a next level of learning where I've absorbed the game and I connect with it. I'm like, oh, okay, it's a game. I like games.
Yeah.
But I just don't do it enough to get better at it, which is the third part, which is you've got to apply. So any skill you're trying to learn, let's take metacognition, for example. I want to be better at thinking about how I think. Well, first you have to understand what that means, which is a fairly simple part of the process. Then you got to say to yourself, I see the value in that. That would make perfect sense. And I could do it at this time. And I could allot this amount of effort to it. But the third part is you got to do it. And as a former athlete, much like Malcolm Gladwell points out in The Tipping Point, you just got to keep doing things and doing things and doing things until you really, really become good at it. And metacognition is the same way. It's any type of learning is just that. You have to absorb it, you have to connect it to your life, and then you have to do it. And it's the doing part that is very hard for other people to instill in you. You have to be inspired to do that yourself.
Yeah, I 100% on board with that. And so when I say the circuits of success, my first one is attitude. We wake up every day, we got a choice to make. I can choose to be in a great attitude. And I do believe it's a choice because not every day, with craziness of life, you wake up just, wanting to sing Kumbaya. It's not human, right, to do that. And so I choose my attitude. I have a belief system that, that I can go to the mat for, right? That I believe in these things that I think will make you successful or help our clients or help the community or whatever it may be. But then the third one is action. And that's, to your point, that's that apply part, right? If we don't take action, you can have the best business plan in the world, the biggest dreams in the world, the best intentions of the world. But if you don't pick up the phone or you don't, go see that person or that client or whatever it may be, nothing's going to happen. Right.
It's absolutely true.
Yeah.
And I just want to, since you brought up the point, you can choose your attitude or your behavior. It's so funny. This is more evidence that Jung was correct when he said there's a collective unconscious out there. I was just yesterday writing these words in the book that will be released in the spring, which will be called The 5 Metrics of Peak Performance Culture. But very early on in my career, I learned 3 tenets of human behavior that's really stuck with me. And that is, you choose your behavior, behavior breeds behavior, and good behavior will always be stronger than negative behavior.
Oh, yeah. That's good.
When people tell me they work with a bunch of, grouchy people or complaining people, I always say, well, look at yourself too, because people don't want to be in a bad mood. But behavior breeds behavior. If you're surrounded by people in a bad mood, you could be in a bad mood.
No,
but
you're
if you
absolutely
choose
right.
to be in a good mood, you might be surprised how much you can influence their mood too.
Well, it's true. And it was funny you say that, because I was thinking I got to go to the DMV. My license expires here in about a month, which is always a fun process, isn't it? And, I got to do the eye test and everything. And I've already said to myself, you know what? I'm going to go in there. I'm going to bring a different energy, because everybody's kind of pissed off that are in there, aren't they? And it's like, I'm going to see, I'm almost like testing it to see if I can bring a different energy to the DMV. You think that'll work?
All right. Be strong, man. There's going to be a lot of behavior trying to breed your behavior.
Exactly. So when you hear that word attitude, so obviously you're in line with that. But and then when we go to belief system, what is that belief system for Dave Mitchell that you have that, hey, you know what? If I do this every day, I create this habit. What are those things that get success in your life?
Well, so I look at belief system maybe a little different than the activity. I approached my personal mission statement like I was facilitating a corporate mission statement. I tried to understand, what's the success scoreboard? What is it I want from life? And I boiled that down to, relationship stuff, physical, mental, emotional well-being, spirituality. I put fiscal elements in there because I think, we live in a capitalistic society. Right. To ignore the financial aspect of our success, some people can, and God love them. It's still an important part for me. And then I kind of look at, the environment with which I find myself, which is all the situations the context that is the world of Dave Mitchell.
Yep.
And I figure out, given this environment in which I live and given this success scoreboard that I want to achieve, what is the core ideology and behaviors that I need to manifest to make that happen? And one of the things that I found that's true about me, and probably one of the reasons I was frustrated very often in the corporate world, is I require a great deal of independence. I don't. It's my nature to work very hard for something I believe in, and so when I give my loyalty to something, I tend to be fiercely loyal in pursuit of the outcome that we're trying to get. And
you're all in.
Yeah, and I found that combined with my need for independence wasn't necessarily an enduring model for success in the corporate world.
Exactly.
I'd tend to burn out, and I'd struggle with resentment and think that, is it really worth it, all this sacrifices I'm making to make this happen? And all of that, of course, was my fault. But a lot of that was I was not working aligned with my core ideology. I need to find something that, I like to make people's lives better. I know that I am both emotional and logical, which is a relatively rare combination. So I can connect with people, but I can provide them with some nice strategic steps for making change rather than just some of the more broad conceptual, models that you often hear from traditional motivational speakers that just kind of sometimes annoy me. And I need to have the independence to pursue this like an entrepreneur. So for me, it was just a matter, again, I hate to keep harping back to metacognition, but it's the first chapter in the book, The Power of Understanding Yourself. And I think you just have to come to grips with, here I am, I'm a fully formed adult. So what I am now it's not impossible to change, but I need to figure out what I got now before I can even start to think about what things I need to tweak. But let's see what I am today and try to align my life around the person who I am so that I'm applying myself at my peak capacity.
So what's the exercise that you tell people or train people on to do that? Like, I mean, obviously you can't just read the book and then all of a sudden, hey, I mean, it takes some work, right? It's reading and working on it.
Yeah, I think what I can do for you is I can tell you the elements that you need to pursue, but you're right, Brett. A lot of it is you're going to have to figure that out on your own. But so in the book, we do an assessment that determines your interactive style. I like to compare it to different iconic Hollywood movie characters because, people respond well to that. But, there's style and sizzle. Your style is what other people notice about you. Your sizzle is your own core values. And core values is a little tougher. I provide in the book a methodology for trying to arrive at your core values, but there's others. I mean, you could Google core values and there'll be a list of things that come out. As a sports fan, what I do is I take those core values and do it like it's March Madness, right? I have them play each other in,
That's awesome.
in double elimination tournaments. Is this more important to me, or is this more important?
Yeah.
Is this, and I got down to 5.
That's a great
core
exercise.
Values. Yeah, it is. And you get down to 5 core values that you say, look, at the end of the day, these are the 5 things that I won't sacrifice. Yep. And it's an interesting endeavor, because you find out there are some things you would sacrifice for something else. And that's where you find out the source of your integrity, right? So everybody likes to use that word integrity, but the reality is at some point in your life, there'll be something and something else that are mutually exclusive, and you have to choose which is more important to me. Yep. And what I realized early on in my career was I was choosing my career over my family very often. And that was counter to my actual core values. And that's what was creating a lot of my internal strife and a lot of my stress, was I kept making bad choices. Yep. Because of the combination of things, right? I wanted to be fiercely loyal, but I was using that incorrectly. I was using that to support an employer instead of my family, thinking that I needed the money and the family would always be there. Fortunately, they were, but I think that was an unfair and certainly misaligned choice I was making.
So what are those 5 core values for you?
Well, I'm going to do you one better. I have in the book. Are we doing video or just audio?
Both. Okay. Some will be listening. Some will be able to see it.
Okay. So I'll do a shameless plug here.
Plug away.
Yeah. And if you look in the book, I'll just try to give you exact.
Is this the one, Understanding People or Understanding Yourself?
This is Power of Understanding Yourself.
Okay.
And in the book, there is a chapter. I'm trying to get to the right page here.
And while you're looking at that, I think it's so important to go through this exercise. And I love your double elimination standpoint. I did really an exercise where I listed as many words as I could think of, right? And then I'm a big acronym guy. And so I love the word grit. I just think there's so much behind it, whether that's grit with your kids, grit at work, with your spouse. So mine are growth, respect, integrity, and trust, right? And those are my 4, and it spells grit. And so, but that exercise took, a couple hours for me to go through with 50 words and really boil it down to what I think that I connect with. And those are the things that are non-negotiable for me, right?
I love that you made it an acronym too. That's fantastic. So in the book, the page is 42 and 43 for those that actually can see. There's a list here of all the values that I come up with. And so I wasn't kidding about the tournament. I didn't do a 8. I did a final 10 just because it worked out better. But you take that big list, you get it down to 10, then you get it down to 5. And then you define that 5. So for me, mine were family. It's not a good acronym. That would have been a great approach. My acronym would be FEETFA.
First thing came to mind, right?
So family happiness, economic security, teaching, freedom, and helping others are my 5. But then I encourage people to define what those words mean to you, because what I've found, like teaching or freedom, that can mean slightly different things.
Absolutely.
So then you define those words, and then you eventually end up with, so my personal core ideology or mission statement becomes to contribute to a loving, happy, and secure family while maintaining my freedom economically and philosophically, to facilitate knowledge and transfer of learning for the purposes of being positive and joyful influence on others. So
that's powerful.
Go. Yeah. So page 46 in the book.
Yeah, and that allows you to get up every day and do that, right? Because you're built your world and your personal life, your professional life. And I don't believe that if you're watching, that they're like this, right? That they're running side by side. They're intermingled, right? And so, because if you have a bad day, you and your spouse get into a little tiff in the morning, it's going to affect your work day, right?
Of course it is.
You have a bad day at work, you're going to come home and it's going to affect your family. And so many people want this work-life balance. There was a gentleman on the show that was a professor at Princeton and stuff, and he talked about work-life integration. And that's what it comes down to. So to your point, that's what you're building your life around, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And I'd like to say that every day I get up and read that per your suggestion. That would be fantastic. I find myself, I kind of move along for a while in a great space.
Yep.
All of a sudden I feel like I'm a little off, I'm a little clunky. Then that's when I have to go back and read it, because usually the reason I feel that way can be explained by reading my core ideology. Another application I find, which may be more specific to the worlds that we live in, but sometimes you'll find yourself with an opportunity and you're just not sure about it. It's different than what you normally do. Maybe there's this gnawing feeling like, just not excited about it. And what I do is I'll read my core ideology and ask myself, does this opportunity fit into that core ideology? And oftentimes, if I'm feeling a little sketchy about it, it's because it doesn't.
Right.
And so that's another aspect of core ideology, I think, is it provides you that integrity, that stake in the ground for your integrity. Because really, to me, what integrity means is that you're true to yourself and you're consistent in that truth.
That's right.
That's what integrity is.
I 100% agree. I even take it that one step for me personally. It's doing what you say you're going to do, right? I mean, it's everything you just said. Plus, if Dave Mitchell tells me he's going to do something, we don't know each other, right? But I would assume, having a conversation like this already, I can 100% trust the fact that Dave Mitchell's going to get it done, and that's integrity.
Yes. Yeah. And they wouldn't have me back at Scott Air Force Base 4 times if that.
That's correct. They would not. They're all about integrity out there. We're lucky to have them in our community. It's amazing. A lot of great people. So it's always about sad. About every 3 years, though, you lose a good friend that moves to Germany or something like that because they leave us.
Right.
The kids in my school, they're all bummed out. Their buddies leaving, and so it's sad. But we won't trade them though. We love them. We love having them here.
You got to make friends with the civil civil contributors over there. Yeah.
Stick around a little longer.
Yeah.
That's good. So when you look back to your EIU days and I'm picturing right now in my mind walking around Old Main and maybe I was walking to Ike's, maybe I was walking to Marty's. I don't know.
Marty's, yeah.
Marty's, sure. But you're walking, across Old Main, beautiful campus. And we were at an Ivy League school, really. I mean, there's Ivy all over Old Main.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. That's probably the only resemblance to
right.
Ivy League.
but it's basically an Ivy school. That's what we'll say. But anyway, great place. But when you look back at those days and then fast forward, I think you said you're 58 now. What did you think back then? Like, where did you think life would be at 58, which back then we thought was a long, long way away, didn't we?
Yeah. And I don't know that I was forward thinking enough to imagine myself at 58. I'm still trying to get my head around the fact with social media now, I'm friends with a lot of my high school teachers. And what I realized is they were only about 6 years older.
Exactly. They're basically our age, right?
Yeah. And I thought they were old people back then and they were just in their late 20s. Right. Yep. So I can't imagine what young me would think of old me now, other than the incredible resemblance to my father.
That's right. Age. That's right.
I think if you could for a moment violate some of the rules of quantum physics and be in two places. Actually, I think quantum physics would allow you to be in two places at one time. I think the biggest surprise for me is how much the journey made sense after all. I think when you're younger, everything seems to be kind of just a collection of experiences that bear no association or relationship to each other. I always say our life story makes perfect sense, but only in hindsight.
Yeah. That's so true.
And so I think I'd be surprised. And the one thing I will tell you is, so in high school, small school, not far from Mattoon. In fact, we went to Mattoon for culture.
The big city.
Yeah, that was the big city. You had a movie theater, and a Chinese restaurant. Right. Yeah. And a mall. I could pick up an album.
Yeah.
But I didn't take school came easy for me, and I didn't take it that seriously. And my lifestyle was pretty loose and easy, and I could move between different social groups very comfortably. When I got to college, I turned down an academic scholarship at the University of Illinois to go to Eastern Illinois University, thinking I might have a shot, and I took that seriously. I took the classes seriously. I graduated magna cum laude. So if I could show up in my life at 18, I would commend myself for figuring that out and not screwing up college, which I think is an easy thing for a lot of kids to do.
Especially in old Coleman Hall, right? That's where you were going. Coleman Hall for your
Yeah,
speech
communications
classes. And
department. Yeah, I was the station manager of the campus radio station.
Oh, were you?
Yeah, yeah.
Is that back in the, no, I think trying to think how old he is, but old Larry Smith. You remember Larry Smith? Was he there then? I don't think he might be between you and I from an age standpoint, but he was from Mattoon, and he was an EIU guy that did the WEIU type stuff. But he's gone on to, CNN and Washington, D.C., did some stuff, and he's had a career in broadcasting.
WEIU was just finishing being built when I left.
Okay.
So it was WELH, East Lincoln Hall.
There you go. So talk to us about the EQ versus IQ, right? IQ is how much information, how much data can we process in a basically a second per second, right? Or per minute, however they look at it. And that EQ, I think, is critically important right now in today's world, that emotional intelligence. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, I gotta say, I was probably one of my biggest surprises in my career, coming from a small community. I always thought everybody else must have something more than I've had to achieve what they've achieved. And as I experienced more and more of the corporate world, and now for the last 25 years, I've traveled all around the world dealing with leaders in different corporations and different cultures. I realized that that intelligence is great. I think I'd rather have it than not have it, but I know a lot of smart people that are just really clunky. So this whole notion, I wish I'd have thought of the EQ idea. It's a great marketing tool. And I don't know, I mean, I have to trust the people that work with this every day that they've got the holy elixir down, but there's definitely a set of skills that some people have, whether it's they just understand people's behavior better, or they just have more control over their own emotional reactions, or whatever it is that EQ makes reference to. That's a thing. It's a real thing. And I guess if you possess, it's like anything else. It must be what Michael Jordan gets frustrated at when he watches people play basketball. It's like, why can't you
be as good as me?
Yeah. If you have it, I think you're puzzled by people that don't. I mean, it's like, why would you do that? You're making things worse. But I guess if you don't have it, you don't realize that you're making those mistakes. And I don't know if that's, I mean, IQ to a certain degree is it's an inherent attribute. It's difficult to meaningfully increase your IQ at some point, I think. I don't know if EQ works the same way.
Yeah.
I hope not, because that's a real opportunity for some people to develop a set of skills that would take their career much higher if they could just learn to be more effective with human beings.
Well, I think it's the way I look at it too is when we talked about earlier, the part of absorb, connect, apply, your apply part, my action part, same thing, right? Just different words. So many people I have found, and being a leader for many years and running an organization for the last 13 years, there are people that come in that are really, really, really smart, but if they don't have that EQ part, they're missing something, right? They miss about the taking action. We feel, what is it? Paralysis by analysis, right? We think we got to know everything before we go do something. And the most successful people, sometimes you kind of figure it out on the fly, right? Wouldn't you agree with that?
Well, I've had to do everything that way for 25 years as an entrepreneur.
I've made a living doing that.
I don't know if that's the best model, but it's the one that I've used.
But it's made you successful, right? I mean,
I mean, it works for me. It works for me, but that's the question I guess everybody has to ask themselves. Right. I do notice that some very self-aware executives that maybe don't possess a lot of emotional intelligence often surround themselves with another direct report that has a better acuity for that. And so, maybe the answer is you're self-aware and you realize these are my strengths and this is my vulnerability, And I can either figure out if I can get better at that, or I go find someone else who has that strength, and
That's right.
and they help balance
That's
that.
right. Question I ask on every show, Dave, is fears. We all put fears in our minds, I think, to some extreme. Some are more than others as far as putting them in our minds. But how many of the fears you put in your mind have actually blown up to the magnitude you put them in your mind to be?
No, none.
None.
And my very first book was called Live and Learn or Die Stupid. And that was, I wrote that after my father passed away. And it was really meant just to kind of chronicle all these things that that go through my head that I think are both evidence of where you can be hamstrung, as well as where you can free yourself from your own self-made shackles. And one for me, I called it the Demon Committee meeting. And it's not completely gone. They still sometimes convene. It's always at 3 a.m.
Right, exactly.
And it's just this moment where you're kind of consumed by all of these possibilities of failure, and your flaws finally bringing you down, and all these things, and it just never happens that way. I mean, knock on wood, I don't want to tempt anything. There have been people experience catastrophic loss and things, but generally speaking, I prefer to act out of faith than out of fear. And that's one of my favorite sayings, and it was told to me early on when I started my business and was still doing a lot of, oh my God, what have I done? What if? How stupid of me to walk away from an executive career and do this. And a very good friend of mine at the time said, Dave, you need to act out of faith, not out of fear. And I thought, wow, that's it. That's fantastic.
That's a perfect one. That's a perfect one. Yeah. I had a guy tell me, one time, I think I was, I don't know, maybe 35. And he said, Brett, if you had a long track record of a company at 35 years of success, would you buy stock in that company? I said, well, yeah, I mean, put my compliance hat on here. There's a lot of things I would look at, right? But point being in the story is, you want to buy a long track record of history of success. And if I look at Dave's 58 years, have there been failures along the way? Sure, right? We've all had failures. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of success in Dave's past that Dave needs to be able to have faith in and not fear, and know you would buy that stock every single day of the week. Right. And for me, that was a big aha moment of like, gosh, when do you just trust yourself and break through and know that fear is probably not going to come out? And I love what'd you call it? The devil committee meeting or something like that?
Demon committee meeting.
Demon committee meeting. I mean, they do. They get together sometimes, and it's not fun. I don't like that meeting, but it is, for me, this podcast has been a big help to have people like Dave Mitchell on here say, you know what, never. Like literally what you were doing before I even finished the question, you're already shaking your head no. And that's what 99% of the people do. It's like it never comes true.
Right. No.
But even if it does, our output to what happens is better than what we thought anyway.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So
the thing that gets you is the one you're not looking for.
Exactly. Yeah. The one that blindsides you and you don't know it, right?
That's like the old Woody Allen line, right? If you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans.
Exactly. And he will definitely laugh at that. So the author of 3 books, soon to be 4 books, where can we find more of Dave Mitchell and more of those books?
Well, you can learn more about me at theleadershipdifference.com. That's the name of my company, The Leadership Difference. So the 3 books that are on the market now, Laugh and Learn or Die Stupid, Live and Learn or Die Stupid. I should know the titles of my own books. Live and Learn or Die Stupid. The Power of Understanding People and The Power of Understanding Yourself are all available through Amazon. They're all still current and available. Awesome. The new book, the working title is The 5 Metrics of Peak Performance Cultures, and that should be out in the spring of 2020. The manuscript is due on December 15th, which means
you got some work to do.
Yeah. There's a sign behind me right over this.
Yeah.
It says it's a Hemingway quote, and it says, "Write drunk, edit sober."
Oh, very good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
got a lot of editing to do, so I won't be doing
it. Exactly. Well, I love it, Dave. It's been awesome having a fellow EIU grad. I don't know about you, man, but I love our stomping grounds, where we came from, and what it helped define and shape our futures, and from where we grew up to where we went to college, and we're very lucky. So thanks so much for being on the Circuit of Success. It's great having you.
My pleasure, Brett. Thank you.